The restaurant was quiet except for the faint hum of conversations and the occasional clinking of cutlery. It was one of those polished, high-end places where the waitstaff moved silently, where the wine list seemed longer than the menu, and where the clientele always carried a certain air of power. At a corner table, shielded just enough for privacy, but positioned where people could still see him, sat Adrian Voss. His face was familiar to anyone who read financial news. He had been profiled dozens of times. Magazines called him the man who bets on the future. His investments had made him a billionaire many times over. And tonight, he was preparing for a private presentation with a group of investors flying in just for him. His leather folder lay open in front of him, pages filled with handwritten notes, projections, and equations. He wasn't eating much, just sipping water, while scribbling quick calculations and checking the formula that anchored his pitch. This was supposed to be revolutionary, a new approach to energy storage that promised efficiency the market had never seen. He was used to the pressure. He thrived on it. But even men who lived on power had blind spots. The waitress approached quietly with his drink refill. Her name was Layla. To most guests, she was invisible, one of the many young workers who kept the place running without drawing attention. She balanced plates and trays with practiced movements, her uniform crisp, her posture careful. But behind that controlled exterior was a mind that hadn't stopped working, even if her life had taken her far from where she once thought she'd be. Years ago, Lila had studied physics. She had been good at it. Not just good, but the sort of student professors remembered. She had loved equations, loved the challenge of solving problems that looked impossible. But then her father fell ill. Bills swallowed her family whole. She dropped out, telling herself it was temporary. It wasn't. Now she worked double shifts to keep her family afloat. The world of research had moved on without her. Still, the numbers had never left her. When she set the glass down, her eyes flicked over the page of notes before she could stop herself. Old habits. She couldn't help it. She scanned the line of equations, recognizing the structure, the familiar language of science she hadn't spoken in years. And then she saw it. A single error, small but devastating. The coefficient had been inverted. She blinked, almost certain her tired eyes were tricking her. But the more she looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a minor slip. The whole formula depended on that balance. If he presented it this way, any half-competent investor with technical knowledge would shred it apart in seconds. The deal would collapse before it began. She froze, unsure what to do. The safe thing was to keep moving, to pretend she hadn't noticed. But her conscience wouldn't let her. He had power, yes. He was arrogant, almost certainly. But she knew what it felt like to watch something collapse, because no one said anything. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so no one else could hear. "That's the wrong formula," she whispered. Adrian's head snapped up. His eyes narrowed, sharp and annoyed. "What did you just say?" His tone was the kind that usually ended conversations. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to answer. "Your coefficient is inverted. The equation won't hold. It collapses." For a moment, there was only silence between them. He stared at her like she was out of her mind. A billionaire, corrected by a waitress. Ridiculous. He glanced back at his notes, more out of irritation than belief. His pen traced the line she had pointed out. Slowly, reluctantly, his brow furrowed. She was right. Completely, undeniably right. His first instinct was anger. How had he missed this? How had his team missed this? But his second instinct, rarer, quieter, was curiosity. "How do you know that?" he asked. His voice had dropped, no longer sharp but still wary. "I studied physics," she said softly. I didn't finish. Life got in the way. But I still know what I'm looking at. He studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she was bluffing. But there was no bluff. Her eyes were steady, calm in a way that unnerved him. People didn't usually speak to him like this. People usually fawned, agreed, or kept their distance. Adrian closed the folder slowly, tapping his finger against the leather cover. You realize what you're saying could have just saved me billions. Lila didn't respond. She felt her cheeks warm, half expecting him to explode, to call the manager, to accuse her of overstepping. But he didn't. He sat back, his expression unreadable, the wheels in his mind clearly turning. The investors arrived not long after, a small group of men in suits who carried themselves with quiet authority. Adrian stood to greet them, slipping back into his usual role, confident, commanding, charismatic. He led them through the pitch as though nothing had happened, his presentation sharp and seamless. They nodded, asked questions, raised concerns, but nothing derailed him. When it was over, hands were shaken, agreements were hinted at, and it looked as though the deal would go through. But as the evening wound down and the investors departed, Adrian found himself thinking less about the success of his pitch and more about the voice that had stopped him from walking into humiliation. When the restaurant quieted again, he spotted Lila clearing a nearby table. She glanced up and froze when she saw him approaching. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she said, wary. He repeated it, almost thoughtfully. "Lila, do you know how rare it is for someone to speak up like you did?" She gave a small, tired smile. "Do you know how rare it is for someone to listen?" Though for a man used to being untouchable, the words landed harder than he expected. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, and set it on the table between them. His name gleamed in embossed letters. "If you ever want to finish what you started, call me. I don't hand these out often." She looked at the card but didn't pick it up right away. "And if I don't?" she asked. "Then you'll go on serving drinks. And I'll go on building companies," he said simply. "But you'll know the offer was there." She hesitated, then slid the card off the table into her apron pocket. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once and left, his driver waiting outside. That night, Lila went home to her small apartment, card still in her pocket, unsure whether it was real or just another cruel twist of irony. Adrian Voss went back to his hotel, portfolio intact, investors pleased, his ego a little bruised, but his respect unexpectedly earned. And both of them carried the memory of that moment. A whisper over a formula, a correction no one else dared to make. Proof that even the most powerful can be humbled by those the world barely notices.